In this lesson I will go through how you can find edges and places to use for like dirt and so on your objects. So I have added two objects that will be in this lesson. So the first one is a cube and the second one is the monkey. So I just pressed Shift A, went to mesh, and then I got the cube and the monkey, so it's in the scene. And when we're talking about edges, there are like different types, of course. So you have the types where you can find all the edges for the faces on your object, all the places where it's like sharp or easy to touch. And that is often what you want when you do like hard surface things and you would like to make some wear and tear on those places. Then we have edges that are like the silhouette of an object, like it's going to be darker around Susan here, and that is often used when you will do something like cartoonish stuff like that. And then we have all the things like the inside of the ear of Susan and so on, the places where dirt will find, and that is like cavity of the object. So we will go through, or I will go through those things so you can see the difference between them and how to achieve them, and also how to do it when it comes to low poly and how to do it when it comes to high poly. And I think we can start with high poly because that is easier to understand and easier to show. So I will subdivide the monkey into 3 times. So I go to Modify Properties, Add Modifier, and select the subdivision surface here. And I take it up to 3, like this. And I can also smooth the shader. So I go to Object, Shade Smooth, and now the object is nice and ready to be used for our experiments here. So if we start with the edges that you can see on the outer part of the object, so it's following the silhouette here, that is often done with different types of Fresnel effects. So we can go to the material properties, press new, so we have something in. And there are then 2 inputs that are used for this. So if I press Shift A and go to input, you can then find something called Fresnel. So we can take and select that. And we can do the same procedure again. So Shift A, input, but in this case we can use something called layer white. So these two are really good for making these outer parts edges. So if I take the Fresnel here and take that into my base color, you can see that we get this Fresnel effect, and how much the light will bend, that we can decide with the index of refraction. So if I take it down to a negative value, you can see that we get a lot of white, and if I go up, you can see we get more like a grayscale here. So you can play with these, and you can then also add a power here or a map range to filter out things. And we can do this cartoonish effect using a map range. It's very easy, so I just press Shift A, go to Converter, and select the map range here. And in map range you have different types here, and one of the types are step linear. So if we select that one, you can see directly that we now have outer part that is very visible, and then you have the black on the inside. And how many colors you would like to use here, that you decide on steps. So with less amount of steps you use a less amount of colors here, and with higher amount of steps you use a higher amount of colors. So, but in that way you can really find the edges, and when I then turn or rotate Susan, it will always find the edges here. And if you would like it to be the reverse, then you can just change the to min and to max, so put 1 here and put 0 here to get it in a different way, or you can inverse it using the color here. So that is really easy to use the Fresnel like that. And the same way with the layer weight. It has Fresnel and it has something called phasing. So when you use the Fresnel here, you can get the same result, and you can, with the blend, decide in the same way you do with the index of refraction here to get this here. And if you use phasing, you get more everything that is like straight to the camera will then be more black. So all the faces that are towards you will be more black, and you can then decide how much using the blend weight here. So these two is really good to use with this. But if I use the same material on this cube here, so I select the material that I used previously, you don't see so much. It changes from dark to bright, but it's hardly on the edges, and that is because it's too low poly. So it can't feel all the small changes because it's no small changes here. It's like 90% or 90 degrees every turn here. So it's not a few degrees. It's really going from one direction to a complete other direction. And then Fresnel and layer weight doesn't work good. So high poly is preferred when working with this. Okay, so that is how you do the edges when it comes to this cartoonish effect, Fresnel or the layer weight. And when it comes to more the faces, or where you would like to have dirt in and so on, then you have different methods. And the most commonly used, if you have some poly in here, is known as using I will show you. I will first get the geometry node, so Shift A, input, and get geometry here. So we have a lot of outputs, and the thing I would like to show you is the pointiness, because that is something that I think it went to 2.80 or something, and was really appreciated, because that is something that can find all the sharp edges in an object, which means that you can find all those places where you easily touch an object, so they get more aging on those parts. And what most people teach you is that you put in a color ramp here, and you put the white and black to about 0.5, and then you can get something in here. We can try that. So Shift A, converter, and a color ramp, and take the pointiness to the factor and take the color out here, and then we drag this to about 0.5 and drag this to 0.5, and then you can see that now we see every sharp edge as a little bit brighter, and you can decide the contrast by just moving this a little bit back and forth like that. So it's an easy way, but in the same way as with the cube here, because now the cube and this has the same material. So if I change this to some color just to show you, you can see that it's the same material, but you don't see any sharp edges on this one. So it's still not working for low poly stuff. It's just working for high poly stuff. And the same with the monkey. If I take down the subdivision in the modifiers here, you can see it gets worse and worse. And if you have the monkey from the start, okay, you get some information here, but it's not good at all. It's really bad. What you can do, if you would like to use a low poly, but you would like to have the pointiness still on that low poly and make it work, is of course that you can bake the information here. So we can just do it to demonstrate. So if I take this up to 3 again and turn it on using this television or a screen or whatever it is, the symbol, and now we have a good image here. So what we then can do is just add a texture here. So Shift A and go to texture, and we select an image texture. We press new, and we call this shadow, and we can keep this width and height, and we don't need an alpha because this will just be black and white, and we can press OK. So now we have something to create this shadow on. So this will create an image if we bake it. So then we go to this one, and now you must be in Cycles to have all these options. So be in Cycles, select the output properties, and when you have that you can just go down a bit, and in this, see if I can find it here, should be here somewhere. No, I mean one step wrong. You should be, of course, in the render properties. So now we have the render properties in, and here we have bake down here. So we select bake, and to bake this you then select the diffuse, and you take away the direct, and you take away the indirect, and just use the color here. And with that selected and produced, and this here, diffuse and color, it's just for you to press bake. So then it will take just a couple of seconds when it comes to this. If you have a more complex object, then of course it will take more time. But now I have it, and if I go to the image editor here, so I change this into image editor, and I change this to shadow, you can see that I have all these shadows here. So we can save that. So image, save, and then we decide where we should have it. So here I have saved it before, and I can do it again. So now it's saved, and I can go back to my 3D viewport. So I have this, and I can take away the subdivision, so it looks really bad. But instead of using my color ramp here, I then use my image texture. So I just put the image texture into my base color, and I now got the baked image onto the monkey. Since we're using the same material here, you can see that it looks really bad on the cube because this is an image that is made for the monkey. But if you just use that, and then you go to object and you select shade smooth, then you have this in, and it is okay to use to manipulate further on, adding noise on the right places and so on, even if it's like a low poly. So one tip would be go to the high poly and bake, and then you can have an image that you can use as a mask on your low poly. So that is one way to do it. But I will take away this now and talk a little bit more about the pointiness, because the color ramp, it's good to do these things. It's really easy, but the pointiness can take both the negative cavity and the positive cavity. So both things that go in and things that go out can be affected by pointiness. And you can of course change that by changing these so the white comes before the black and so on. But it's, let's say that you have this in a group. So if you have this in a group, you can't use color ramp because you don't have an input that can control a color ramp. And it's also hard to go from the negative to the positive and so on. So there is another way, and that is to use math between the pointiness and the base color. So I can turn on the subdivision again, so we get a good result here, and take away the color ramp by pressing X or delete. And then I will add Shift A, converter, and the math. Put that in here, and put that to the pointiness, and change this into subtract, and just copy that. So Shift D, and copy it again, Shift D, so we have free math. I can move the principal out a bit, and we just connect with the top here, and that into the base color. Now everything got black, but we changed this into multiply, and we changed the last one into an add. So this is the secret formula to use if you want to use the pointiness in a group. And what you then do is just connect the value in here. So if you put value here, like that. You can then make it a positive value or a negative value. So you can see if I drag it to the positive here, you get white on all the sharp edges, and if I take it to the negative, then I get dark on all the sharp edges, and you get bright inside here where it's soft. So now you have an easy way to control it. But if you look at the cube the same way as before, this is only for high poly. But this little solution here will of course at least make it workable in a node group, which you can't do with the color ramp. Okay, so that is one way to make these edges. Then we have several other ways that also perhaps could work on this little box down here. So let's take away the geometry or the subtract, multiply and add on the value, so we have it cleared, but we will use the geometry still. Now I have smoothened this, so I used object and I used shade smooth, and I will do the same with the cube here, so object, shade smooth. Then both of these are smoothed. Why I did that was because I would like to have some difference between the normal and the true normal. And as I think I went through in one of the earlier lessons, the normal is the normal including all the bumps and all the changes you do. So if I change this to shade smooth, then it's a bit different from the raw normal that doesn't have any smoothing, which means that we have a difference between normal and true normal, and that we can use to get all the changes between when a face changes. It will not be as smooth as pointiness, because this is more finding the differences between the faces, but it will work for hard and low poly stuff like this cube here. So let's try it out in different ways. So I will add a vector matte. So I press Shift A, converter and vector matte. And as I said, we can take the difference here, so we can use subtract normal from the true normal. And if I just put that in, you get a lot of colors, but already now you can see that it seems to find the edges in some way. So then we need something here, and we can put in a length. So I press Shift, or I can just take copy of this, Shift D, put that in, and change this into a length. And we don't see so much, because as soon as we change this type, it loses the node here. So we add it in like this, and now you can see that something happened both on the monkey here and on the cube here. So on the cube we got these small circles in the middle, so it's not really the edges, but it's something. And we got a lot of small lines here on the monkey on the high poly. So now it's almost the reverse, that the high poly doesn't look so good in this situation. However, this doesn't look good as well, so we need to change that. So yes, we have shade smooth, which means that we get some difference, but we need to do some changes on the object itself as well. So I will press Tab, and then I will do some loop. So I will press Ctrl R, and just drag that up, and then you can see when I drag it up, the little dot will follow the line here. So I just drag it up to here about, and then I do the same for the bottom one. So Ctrl R again, just drag it down like this, and you can see it follows in a good way. And then you can do the same with the side here, and you can do it with the other side, and I think we have two sides more, so we do it for this one, Ctrl R again, like that. And then I just press Tab, and suddenly you can really see those edges on the low poly in a good way. However, on the monkey, this is not workable. It doesn't work good at all. It's really bad. So, but for low poly it works. And you can do this in different ways. So using the subtract is one way. You can also use a cross product, which also will take like the difference between those two more in a 3D word way, but the result will be exactly the same as with subtract in this case. Another way to do it is to use ambient occlusion. So I can take away these. I know it's much, so you can just go through this video over and over again, because I will go through a lot of techniques here to make this happen, but we take them one by one. So another technique, as I said, is to use ambient occlusion. So I just press Shift A and input and use ambient occlusion. And if I just press inside and only local, it will feel where you have the thinnest parts of your object, and then that part will be brighter. And we can use that to find the edges as well. So if I connect that into this base color here, you can see it gets a little bit brighter in the center here. And you also get some brightness out here because we added that extra line, as you remember. We don't need that extra line for ambient occlusion if we don't want like double lines here. So to then fix that to look good, we can then put in a map range. So Shift A and then converter and map range. And we can just drag these up and down, as you can see here, to get this thing in the middle here. But we have then the same problem as we had with other things, and that we only have this like middle part and we don't have the edges. But in this case, it's not about adding another line in the model. It's more that we have to decrease the distance here. So if we increase or decrease the distance, it tests a shorter and shorter area here, which means that if we take it really small, you get these really nice lines here. And in some way it also works on the high poly, so you get all the cavities in here and all the things that are going out. So this is not about getting a sharp edge or getting some cavity. It's more where is the object thin, where is not so much geometry around. So the head here, it's a big thing, but the ear is really narrow. It's just a thin wall here, so then everything gets black here. So if it's for this type of object, it could be that you can have some use of it, but not sure. But for the other type, which is a cube, then it's really perfect to use ambient occlusion using inside and only local. And only local is just so we don't have anything outside that will affect this cube. It's cubed by itself, and using the inside, using distance, and you get these edges here. So that is one way to get all these things. Then we can look more at the thing which are like the dirt and the cavity and so on, how to produce that. We can of course use the pointedness, but there are other ways as well. So if I remove this and I go to the solid view here, there are vertex paint that you can do. So I can select this monkey and I can go to vertex paint here. And when I have this monkey, I can first put this to white and then select paint and press Shift K or set vertex color. And then I can be sure that this is completely white right now. And then I can just go to paint and select dirty vertex colors. And you get all that in here, all the cavities, all the places where you normally have dirt. Then you get that on your monkey, and you can fine tune it here with how much blur you would like and how many times it should go through and in what type of angles it should look at. But normally you just can keep it as it is. And as soon as you pressed the paint and dirty vertex color, you got some information here in the object data properties that is resided in the color attribute. So if you open color attributes, you have now something called col, and that you can use in your node to get this information here. So if I go to rendered view, it's now white, but if I put in, pressing Shift A, go to input and use this color attribute here, you get a list and you can find col in here. So if I just take that and drag that to the base color, you can see now that I got all the information from the vertex paint into my monkey here. So it worked really good. However, with the cube not so much, because we have not painted it, but also because it's low poly. So if I do the same thing with the cube, so I go to solid view again, select my cube in object mode, so we have that, and go to vertex paint, and then try paint and dirty vertex color again, you get a really good result. And the reason for that is because we drew those extra lines. If I now press edit, those extra lines, because vertex paint means that it fills only the area inside a vertex. So if you only have the side with one vertex here and one in that corner and so on, then it doesn't have much to go on. But since we now have these extra edges that we put in here, then it has this big area, which, if I go back to object mode, is totally black. Then you have that little area that we created, and there we can have some gradient that goes in, and you can then find the edges. So those little edges here that you put in are really important to make this vertex paint look good. So if I now take and do another cube by going to object mode here, pressing Shift A, mesh, and select the cube and just drag that to GY, so we have it here. Then we have this without anything, so it's just this. And now I go to vertex paint like this, and I try the same, paint or dirt vertex color. You can see it gets all black, not a nice result at all. So we don't have those extra lines, which means that we don't have any, what you could say, like a stop area. So it's just going in that direction, everything is black, that direction, everything is black. No changes, no new faces, no nothing. But just adding those two, or yeah, those couple of lines will make a world of difference in this thing when you press the render view here. Because now you can see this is looking really good using the color attributes. So it's really easy to change things with this color attribute and using the vertex color, as long as you have polygons for it. And if you have many polygons, then you get this soft thing here, and if you have few, you can get more like white and black like this. So that is a few techniques to use to create lines that we then can add noise into or change color onto and so on to make everything age a bit. So let's say that we have like yellow color here and we have some metal here with some dents on. Then it's just to add some noise on this, and we can, I think I will go through it later on in some other lesson. And we have all those things in place, and it will look really, really good. There is another way to do it, which is more manual, and that is to texture paint these things as well. So if I take away this color attribute here, and I go to the solid view with my monkey and I go to texture paint, then you get everything purple here, but you can go to texture slots, create a new texture for base color and press whatever color you would like to have here, and then you can change this into like a black or something. So we paint with black, and if I just drag here you can see you get something on the ear that is black. But what we can do more is that we have masking options here, and we can use something called cavity mask. So if you use cavity mask, it will automatically fill all these dents in, so like the ear and the stuff around the eyes and nose and so on. So if I now drag here, you can see it's not completely black, it gets difference between these. And if you change the line here, then you can get even bigger results when you're painting. So you can get where it gets black and where it gets, so if I just continue paint here, you see that it's not completely black here. It's brighter on the sides of the ear and inside here and so on. The problem with the texture painting is that it's very UV based, so your UV map makes these lines here when you're using the mask in a bad way. So if you do this method, it's manual, but it works for low poly, but you need to hide your UV cuts in a good way on the model so it doesn't look too obvious exactly where the cuts are going, like it's in this monkey right now. But it's an option to use if you want to. So you have that, and then it will create this material base color, which you then of course need to save if you want to use it for your future texturing where you have painted everything with your texture paint. So a lot of different techniques. So we have used ambient occlusion, we have used difference between normal, true, normal, we have used pointiness, we have used vertex paint, we have used texture paint, we have certainly we used something else. I don't remember everything. You have to go through this little video to see all the things and where you can use the different things to get it good or bad result, or hopefully good result when using the different types. So this is like a rather long introduction to get the edges, but hopefully you learned something even here, and I will see you in the next lesson. So I just say bye for now.